We're already a quarter through October, and the garden has changed a lot.
Oh, Pittsburgh soil.
Hello. Welcome back to Pittsburgh Home Garden, where it has been incredibly rough. I cannot even hide it. This summer has been, incredibly disgusting for my garden. The first 2 months, the constant rain, the very bad weather we've been having lately. It's been 45 degrees at night during the later end of September, which is incredibly rare around here. It just seems that all of the forces came together to leave me with such a decimated garden on both sides. Here in the brassica bed and the great Mother Bertha bed, as you can see, massive damage. It took one night, for the groundhog to get in here and to really wreck my plants. As soon as you think everything is safe, you get caught slipping and, you get left with things like this. But I'm not going to be too dramatic in this video because that is what my new vlog series is for. If you want to hear all my deeper inner thoughts about the garden, go ahead and watch that video. Why do I even try? And I just rather bury myself right here. But, it is what it is. I am a gardener, and a gardener's going to garden. And what I can do from here is garden. I was able to expand the bed as I put in my new protection measures. And as you can see, the plants are still standing. There is, very, very small new growth happening up top. I do have maybe a month and a half, maybe 2 months left before, snow hits, maybe 3 months. It's been strange weather. I really can't call it. So, this has been a season of learning for me, and I imagine for many of yous, because, global warming certainly has been, affecting all of us. I'm going to cry if I look at these too long. So let's go ahead and get into a bit of planting. It's the only thing I could do. I'm going to weed up around here, and I'm going to get some new little plants in the ground and utilize this new, lane of space. I might even do a bit of reconfiguring in the bed, really try to figure out where I want things. I have taken out the trellis space. So, I got some new space in here, and the only thing you could do is garden. That's what we do. To be a little less dramatic, I can certainly say that the summer overall was a good success for the brassica bed. For the vast majority of this summer, I have certainly been able to harvest, all of the kale. My collard greens certainly suffered from the animal pressure. My okra, for the first time ever, my groundhogs are eating my okra. It's actually been such a thing. Everything else in the bed, though, had did well until that one fateful night. One thing I've certainly learned this summer is, with the changing weather around here, I have to be a bit more risky in the early part of the summer. I think all of my plants should have gotten in the ground at the beginning of May. I should have, tested the weather, challenged the weather to actually kill off the young plants, because I just think, getting the plants in the ground as late as I did, and then for them to suffer the adverse weather at the same time, just got, the majority of everything off to a bad start with the rest of the yard. Of course, by that time, brassicas were already in the ground and established, and that is why they're, still so tall and thick now. Honestly, the best thing of a bad situation is, these babies are still standing and they're still putting out, growth. And as are most things around here, I just fear that, I'm going to run out of season before they can really get their groove back. All right, so amongst the decimated plants, we are going to put some new babies in because, we still have season left. I could go another couple weeks, and really cry myself to bed like I have been doing about my bed. But I think tonight I'm going to sleep a lot better because I know I got young babies kind of going in the ground. So, of course, I have your classic redhead lettuce. This is going to go very well and should do pretty damn well until I would say January-ish, hoping, fingers crossed. I also have some spinach. I have some bok choy here, a ton of bok choy because it's a very fast grow. It's one of those plants that you can put in the ground and feel good every day seeing, and that's sometimes what you need as a gardener. Sometimes you just need a win. Of course, I have some beets here. I have some red Russian kale that I grew earlier on in the season. During the middle of the summer, the young seedlings didn't do so well because I think there was a little bit too much heat. But now at the end of the summer, I'm expecting them, to do pretty well. And I have a little bit of spinach, which is always a finicky plant. But I have found that planting all your spinach maybe in one big tray and then kind of letting them all germinate together like that, for some reason or another, seems to be working out better for me. So I have a tray inside of spinach that I am very happy to pull out very soon. So here we are in what was supposed to be my melon patch. It actually still kind of is. There technically are tons of melon plants in here that are doing pretty well, but this bed was actually part of an experiment that I did this year where I wanted to see how well, just a plastic surrounding protects this bed compared to, say, like bird netting from the groundhogs, the gophers, and whatever else is out here. I got everything apparently. And this actually did a good job. I still have very young like cucumber plants in here that are still doing very well. Of course, I can see some animal damage. There certainly are leaves missing, so at some point he got in here. But my biggest problem with this experiment was actually thinking about pollinators. There were no flowers in here at all, so the mini melons that I did get suffered a bit of blossom rot, where the ends just don't necessarily make it. This is actually a pretty good one. I've gotten worse in here. It's like this little one here. You can see it's already rotting at the bottom. And that is simply because there were no pollinators, to really take care, or there were no flowers, excuse me. So the pollinators could be attracted over here. So until this plant that is actually from the outside of the bed made its way in, there were no bees surrounding this bed at all. So it's certainly something I need to take care of, for next season. I still like the idea. It's a very hot bed. I am actually excited to see what it does the rest of the season now that I am going to trellis everything up and have these young flowers actually sticking out, and hopefully, they begin to attract all the pollinators they need for at least one or two more melons. So here we are at the original big bed, which actually doesn't seem that big at all anymore. There's certainly going to be an expansion coming soon to this bed, but this bed has taught me many things. It has taught me how bad a summer can really be on your tomatoes. It taught me how bad that animals really want to just destroy your life. I put up chicken wire around here, and this summer I learned that groundhogs can climb. Apparently, these are spaced out at the perfect length to where this little nasty rodent can climb up and eat all of my morning glory leaves. And for those of you who think I'm crazy, there are eaten leaves at the very tops of this plant, and nothing else would have done that. Granted, deer eat them as well, but I have seen it with my own eyes. The thing climbs up, and it's a nightmare. It was a nightmare. This entire summer was a nightmare. But I still have, a couple goodies in the bed that I certainly haven't been harvesting the way that I should. So here inside the bed, I'm sad to report that, my tomatoes simply never recovered from the very beginning of the season. I've been fighting blight since June, early July. I've realized that I built this fence around the gate a little bit too close to the tomatoes to where, The flexing in the gate still allowed animals to get to the very tops of certain plants. You know, like I said, it was a nightmare. And this was my grand idea. And I'm certainly going to expand on it next year. I'm going to expand this bed actually very soon and, still put in the work because, what else am I going to do? Quit? you know? But the best thing, out of this very shitty situation is the fact that I did get some tomatoes. I have here the only two ox heart tomatoes that made it throughout the season. For those who are longtime viewers, I'm pretty sure you remember how excited I was to plant these. And I'm very excited to see, these very sexy tomatoes. Best thing I could do, certainly is put these to good use and to save the seeds. Honestly, with these ox hearts and as well with these cherry tomatoes that I have here, the best thing I can do is save these seeds because these seeds are super strong. As stated, this has been a terrible year fighting blight for the last 3 months. And these tomatoes seem to have made it all the way through. So on the very ripe ones, I am going to be saving the seed because very early next year, I will be replanting these. And I know that these will probably have a better chance of making them than any store-bought seed that I could buy. And here we are on the other side of the big bed, where I have all of my peppers and a few eggplants that are certainly doing well. There seems to be, a bit of stagnation as far as them getting thicker, but they are putting out fruit that I certainly have not been picking. This is what depression looks like to a gardener when you start to let all of your peppers go red on the actual plant. To be honest, I've simply been depressed. This has been another summer of, dealing with animals, dealing with, erratic weather and just not getting the results that, I'm expecting after putting in so much work. Just things seem to like snowball here at the end of the summer. And, I was feeling bad for a couple weeks. And I think that's, okay to certainly admit. But, the garden is here for healing. The garden is here for you, whenever you need it, whenever you want it. And I'm certainly excited to, prepare for this fall and prepare for the next spring. But, I can certainly admit that this summer did not go, the way I wanted it to, But, hey, Pepper Daddy isn't going to be too mad with corked peppers. I just should have did it in the house. And last but certainly not least, we are here in the saving grace that has been my greenhouse. Man, I'm so happy I got this thing. I am very fortunate for the greenhouse because this year the greenhouse, did its damn thing. And it actually saved, 50% of the garden. Honestly, all the tomatoes I've been getting, a good majority of the late season greens that I still had in here about a week ago, I was getting out of here. My melons, I was getting out of here. As you can see, look at this mammoth squash that's been growing. This thing is huge, but, it's the season. It's certainly coming to a close. There is a good amount of powdery mildew starting to take over this big old squash plant here. I can pull one off real quick. Actually, I was moving through here. You see that? That's powdery mildew all over me. This is straight dust flying everywhere. All these are spores. I shouldn't be doing this. But as you can see, certainly need to do some pruning, but the greenhouse was certainly kicking all throughout the season. All of these plants grew very, very large. They had taken over the very tops of my greenhouse, and I now want to plant my entire garden next year vertically. Now that I know that the squash can get this tall, now that I know that my pole beans can actually grow that tall, and that my melons will still grow even with a bit of damage at the bottom of the leaves. There is so many benefits of growing vertically, at least for me here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So behind me, I have my wonderful tomatoes that have been kicking all season. I've been preparing to actually save these tomatoes because I want to make delicious sauce in about 3 to 4 months. Certainly didn't come up with, the number of tomatoes I thought I would have over the summer, but I am very happy with what I have. And I'm also very happy to see that my kiwi plant has put on tons of growth. Apparently, this wasn't the year for me to actually get fruit, but who knows what will happen next year. As long as I keep that baby alive, with water, I'm not too worried about the overwintering process because it's actually already survived a winter. This will be its second winter and only its first summer. So hopefully, upon the second summer, we would actually get some Pittsburgh kiwis. So here along the alleyway, you might be able to better see the actual depth of, how much growth was actually happening here in the greenhouse. All of these tendrils that belong to my cucumbers are now dying off. I have gotten 1 or 2 small melons out of here. I still don't believe I gave the melons optimal growing conditions, possibly not enough sunlight in the beginning, but all of the melons I have been getting have roughly been about this size or a little bigger. This doesn't look the most mature, but it actually has tons of cracking at the bottom, and the tendril that it is connected to is totally dry. So, I'm gonna go ahead and take this little cantaloupe inside the house, see how it is. Right now it's just very sparsely growing, and it's a perfect time to now put in more cucumbers, and I'm going to put in some more beans and more peas because there's going to be so much growth happening here inside the greenhouse within the next couple months compared to outside, to where I'm going to put a lot more of my energy in here. And actually, right after the video, I'm going to go through, start pruning, really take out some of these plants, make some space, and I will probably take 2 or 3 of the tomatoes outside in the beds and bring them in here and, just kind of see what they do. I can only do what I can, and, this is still in my power. So, and here at the very end of the greenhouse, I have my most precious of tomatoes. I saved these on purpose because I knew that I might be a little bit of a downer during this video, me being all sad about my garden. So I wanted to harvest these things that I knew would make me happy. Look how big and sexy this damn tomato is. It only has a little bit of zipping at the bottom. This is the perfect time to pick this. I can't wait for this baby to ripen up. I might even save it just because it is so sexy. The summer certainly didn't turn out the way that I thought, but what I keep trying to remind myself and what I keep trying to say is that I actually did learn a lot, and maybe sometimes summer seasons are strictly for learning. A lot of things need to change around here. A lot of things need to change in my personal life. And maybe this garden is just a reflection of what I need to do. Maybe I'm insane for trying again next year. Maybe we all are, for battling the elements of Mother Nature and the cycle, of life. But here we are. Here we try. I can't be too mad. I have a wonderful bounty right now, and with raising prices, this is certainly worth, I don't know, $60 easily. This is Trump's economy. We're here. It fucking sucks. But I want to thank everybody for watching the video. Thank you for supporting me throughout this journey. Thank you for supporting the channel while YouTube figures out its new algorithm and what's it going to do with us smaller channels. If you would like to support the channel, please check the links below. Overall, I just want to thank you for checking me out all summer. Yins really keep me going. I will be gardening without YouTube, but it's just a little sweeter with YouTube, So until next time, I'll be here gardening.
Oh, Pittsburgh soil, where melodies find roots. In my garden of jazz, wearing dandy boots. Nature's got the beat, and the blossoms hum. Every flower's a note in this lifelong drum.